You know, there's just something magical about stepping inside a historic theater. They're these incredible architectural marvels, right? Designed from the ground up for the ultimate performance. But as we're about to see, the real drama isn't always happening on the stage. I mean, just look at this. They are truly palaces of culture. Everything from the sweep of the balconies to the tiny ornate details on the ceiling was built for beauty, for acoustics, for just pure spectacle. They're designed to transport you to another world before the show even starts. But all of that grandeur, it's hiding a pretty dangerous secret. What if the biggest drama, the most heart-stopping story of life and death, wasn't part of the play at all, but was actually unfolding in the building itself? And that's where we hit this terrible contradiction. These gorgeous buildings, with their strong brick or stone exteriors, were filled with wood, plush velvet, and tons of painted scenery. They were, for all intents and purposes, magnificent tinderboxes. And this really shows you the devastating potential. What you're seeing is Barcelona's Liceu Theater before and after a catastrophic fire back in 1994.
So when you think about it, the whole history of making these places safe is really this constant balancing act between two huge and often conflicting goals. The first one, obviously, is protecting human life. But the second is preserving the priceless, totally irreplaceable heritage of the buildings themselves.
So to really get why we have the safety standards we do today, you gotta look back. Back to a time when going to the theater was a genuine risk. It was a period just filled with unimaginable catastrophe.
Yeah, this slide, it just lays out the scale of the problem in a really stark way. The numbers are they're devastating. The 19th and early 20th centuries were just littered with these horrific fires. Vienna, 450 people gone. Exeter, 200. Chicago, 600. The human cost was absolutely staggering.
Okay, so let's zoom in on one of the most infamous disasters in American history, a fire that would completely change how we think about safety in public places. The Iroquois Theater Fire in Chicago.
Over 600 people died. 600. Think about that for a second. It was mostly women and children, there to see a holiday matinee. To this day, it's still the deadliest single-building fire in U.S. history.
So what on earth went so wrong? Well, it was just a perfect storm of failures. You had highly flammable scenery that caught fire from a hot stage light. The so-called asbestos fire curtain, which was supposed to drop and protect the audience, actually got snagged and wouldn't come down. And then, the most tragic part, the exits were either locked or hidden behind heavy curtains. Why? To stop people from sneaking in without a ticket. It meant there was simply no way out. But you know, it's often out of these horrible tragedies that real change happens. The unbelievable losses at the Iroquois and other theaters, it forced society to react, and it led to a revolution in fire safety that we all still benefit from today. And you can really see that change start to build on this timeline. There's a clear progression. I mean, sure, early firefighting efforts existed, but that Iroquois fire in 1903 was a huge turning point. All of a sudden, we see standards for things we totally take for granted now, like clearly marked exit doors, signs, and even the invention of the panic bar, you know, that bar on a door you just push to get out. And technology, of course, played a massive role. Early innovations like this horse-drawn steam pump were absolute game changers. For the very first time, firefighters could get a really powerful stream of water to a fire quickly. They could show up ready to go, instead of being exhausted from just hauling all their equipment by hand. And this is where you see a really crucial shift in the whole philosophy. The goal wasn't just about putting the fire out anymore, it was about slowing it down. It was about designing buildings that could actually resist the fire long enough for people to get out. All of a sudden, time became the single most valuable resource. And that shift led to critical inventions like the modern fire curtain. Remember that one that failed at the Iroquois? Well, these are totally different. They're heavy, robust barriers designed to drop down fast and completely seal off the stage, which is where most theater fires start, from the audience, buying everyone those precious minutes they need to evacuate safely.
Okay, so this brings us right up to the central challenge that engineers and preservationists face today. We have all this amazing technology to make buildings safe, but how do you actually apply it to these delicate, irreplaceable historic structures without, destroying them? This really gets to the heart of the dilemma. I mean, think about it. How do you jam a modern sprinkler system, fire doors, and smoke detectors into a 200-year-old theater without ripping apart the very history you're trying to protect? It's a massive, massive challenge. So, to get around this, there's been this huge shift in thinking. We've moved away from what are called prescriptive rules, which is basically just a rigid checklist that says, you must put a sprinkler right here. Instead, we've moved to performance-based design. I love this analogy on the slide. It's like instead of being told to follow a recipe exactly, you're told to just bake a cake that meets a certain standard. You can use whatever methods you want. This kind of flexibility allows for really creative solutions that protect both people and history.
And that really brings us to the cutting edge of how we stay safe today. Fire safety in these old buildings isn't just about following rules anymore. It's become a complex science, a really high-stakes calculation of risk.
What this all means is that it's just not a simple checklist anymore. Nope. Instead, engineers are using these sophisticated models to run a complex scientific equation, balancing dozens and dozens of variables to figure out the true risk profile of a building.
And wow, this slide really gives you a glimpse of just how complex we're talking. Now, don't worry about reading all the details. Just look at all those variables. This is a little piece of a risk calculation using something called the frame method. You've got fire load density, access factors, building dimensions. It's an incredibly detailed, deep dive scientific analysis.
So what the frame method basically does is turn risk into a number. By analyzing hundreds of different factors, it lets engineers get away from a one-size-fits-all approach. They can design safety solutions that are precisely targeted to the unique weak spots of each and every historic building.
So the next time you're sitting in a grand old theater, or really any historic building, just take a moment, look around, and think about the unseen battle that's been fought for centuries, a battle between fire and human ingenuity, and ask yourself, what hidden network of science, history, and engineering is working right now, silently, to keep me safe?